when I was doing things that raised my profile, it made sales really, really easy. So it was that whole thing where I then became super well known within that industry. I became like this magnet for opportunities. So when I was having sales meetings, people felt like they already knew me, which made the sales conversations so much easier. And then once I realized that was the impact, I got a bit more intentional and had a plan around it.
You're listening to the Sales Today podcast, and I'm your host, Fred Copestake. On this podcast, we explore how sales professionals can develop a modern approach to winning business, the application of virtual selling techniques, how to create meaningful business relationships, and much more. Why not take our free collaborative selling scorecard to see how your sales approach suits today's environment? You'll find a link in the show notes. And welcome to this episode of the Sales Today podcast, where I'm delighted to be joined by Sophie Milliken MBE. Sophie, welcome. First royalty we've had on the show.
I don't think it makes me royalty, but yeah, I'll take it. I like it.
Does it not? It must put you on some line to the throne, some succession or something.
I don't know. I'll tell you what it does do. It means that if I ever get married again, I can get married in St. Paul's Cathedral. So that's quite royal, I suppose.
Oh, that's very cool. So yeah, you are virtually royalty. But no, I'm taking the mickey a little bit, but I shouldn't, because you've got that through doing tons of stuff through volunteering and being, well, the catchphrase I use is good people doing good things in a good way. So yeah, you've done a ton of good stuff there. So I shouldn't take the mick.
I don't mind.
No, because I've heard a lot of the stuff that you do. You're a podcast host.
Yeah.
So I'm under pressure. But I want to talk to you as much as anything in your role as founder of Moja, which is an agency all about raising profiles and getting people known in their industry. Okay, right. And so you work with entrepreneurs, founders, business leaders mainly. Is that correct?
That is true. Yeah, we've moved into supporting corporates as well. So we're looking at doing development programs with key people within corporates, where typically salespeople would fall under that. So yeah, so we're doing quite a few things now, mostly on a retainer basis, but some project stuff too.
Yeah, key people in corporates are the salespeople. They keep the corporate going, don't they? That's
absolutely
my rather biased take on it. And so, yeah, that's exactly what I want to talk to you about, is that sort of how can a salesperson, so let's focus back in onto them, because that is the target audience here. How can they raise their profile, get known across the industry, build the right reputation, enhance the credibility, all that good stuff? Or actually, no, rather than how, should we start with why they don't? Because I think there's some serious blockers which stop people doing some, in some ways, pretty simple things that are going to give them a load of benefit. So what gets in folks' way?
I think there's a few key things that get in people's way. And I think if I think back to the reason why this business came about in the first place, it was because I was the key salesperson in my previous business, which was a completely different industry. And once I went into that sales role, because I had a co-founder originally who used to do the sales side and I was ops. And then when he stepped back from the business, I was everything for a bit until we just went off like a rocket and went on this big scale up journey. But I was always the key salesperson. And I had this light bulb moment, probably about 2 years before I sold the business, that when I was doing things that raised my profile, it made sales really, really easy. So it was that whole thing where I then became super well known within that industry. I became like this magnet for opportunities. So when I was having sales meetings, people felt like they already knew me, which made the sales conversations so much easier. And then once I realized that was the impact, I got a bit more intentional and had a plan around it. And then when I exited that business and had to think about what do I do next, that became a bit of the light bulb moment again, where I thought, that actually could be a business. And here we are now. So I think there's an element of people not joining those things up, which would have been me sort of 5, 6, 7 years ago. I think that's one of the things. I think a few other more obvious ones might be time. People thinking they haven't got enough time to spend on their profile, especially if they're doing things like, sales, which is high pressure and out and about a lot. They might think this is going to take them away from the sale. I think other things might be a bit of imposter syndrome, to be honest. I think that's a big thing. People thinking, who do they think, who do, sorry, people be thinking, who do people think I am, that I'm, kind of put myself out there. People worrying about, are the trolls going to come after them if they start being more visible? And, these are genuine concerns that people have. But my theory is that you've got to put yourself out there to get the benefits. And that negative side is tiny. It is absolutely tiny. And we're never going to be huge, big global superstars with this presence of being, stalked by paps, etc. So the reality is the troll side of things, I think people worry about without needing to.
Yeah, I think actually we'll go with that last one. I'm going to go back to some of the things you said before, but that, I'm not an influencer. I'm not Kim Kardashian. I don't want to do the things that they do. It's a bit needy. It's a bit showy offy. I don't know, maybe that's a bit of a British thing,
Yeah.
But that's not what it's about, is it? It's actually don't do that stuff, because you probably will look a bit of an idiot and have the opposite effect.
Yeah.
So don't let that be one of the blockers.
I totally agree. And I think, we hear a lot about this term authenticity and people wanging on about being authentic. And there is that word annoys me now because it's so overused. But actually, the meaning behind it is very true, because if you start trying to project this image of you as a Kim Kardashian or whoever, that's not probably who you really are. So it won't work anyway. So it's more just about being you, but being you more visibly and showing up a bit more. If we look at something like LinkedIn as an example, there are so many people that are LinkedIn lurkers who go on it multiple times a day. They see what people are up to. Maybe they might like someone's post or they might comment on it, but actually they're not showing up to share their own content on there consistently. And that's just one tiny example, because for me, visibility is about so much more than social media. But that's a great example where actually, if you just started making time to create some content that you're sharing, then that's where all these things do start coming together. But there's just so many people that don't even use that platform, which you can, get so much from, because they're too busy sort of lurking in the shadows, worrying about what people are going to think, or worrying, are they going to get more than 5 likes on a post?
Yeah. And it's interesting when I find, particularly sort of the area I'm talking to, so salespeople, engineering, manufacturing, you'll tend not to get a lot of likes for that specific stuff for them. However, when you talk to people, it's, oh yeah, I've seen your stuff. Oh yeah, I really like it. In fact, that's why we're talking. It's like, oh, okay. So already you're going, and the word I'm using, personal brand, people recoil from a little bit, is you're going with an enhanced reputation. Yeah, people are already thinking, hey, this is someone who is interesting to talk to. They can help me. They know what's going on in my world. And that's what we're trying to do, really, isn't it?
100%.
Show that, hey, we get you. We get you, customers.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And it's interesting, that example there where you said that, you're showing up to something and someone says they've already seen something. So they might not have even liked the post or commented on it, but they've seen it. It's there. And every time you're putting a post out, it's that building that credibility. It's building that authority. And it almost doesn't matter if you only get 5 likes on it, because if someone's seen it, that's going to then go and do some business with you, job done, and that's where you then start seeing the benefit. I mean, I can think of a great example of a post that I did. This is years ago, but I think it's a really strong example. So when I was running the previous business, I did a post about an article that I'd written for an industry magazine, and it was very, very niche. It was about online tests. And someone read my post, then read the article and sent me a message on LinkedIn. I don't remember her liking the post or commenting on the post, but she took action to get in touch with me. Fast forward 2 weeks, and I was down in London presenting to their whole board about why we should bring in this particular assessment process for that business. And we ended up doing a 60 grand sale off the back of that LinkedIn post. So, on the face of it, she didn't really engage with the post, but she took the action. And I was perceived as this expert coming in and talking to all of her board about it, and it generated that amount of business. So you've got to do it, and this goes back to what are the barriers? Well, if you don't do it, you're not going to get those kinds of returns.
If you don't, you're not going to get those returns. If you do, you are opening yourself up those opportunities. And I think, again, in the sales world, also the sales world I inhabit, a lot of people don't. So there is a big opportunity here to rise above the rest.
Totally agree.
And I say it's easy, and I don't know if that's the right word. It's simple enough. It's probably quite hard because that mental block we're talking about. But once you've worked out how to do this, which basically is just talking about customers' problems, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a little bit more to it, but if you don't talk about yourself, you don't need to talk about yourself. Don't talk about yourself.
Exactly.
Customer problem.
And
Yeah.
actually, that's the cleverer way of doing it, because if you're sort of almost spotlighting someone else or something else, then it's showing you in the right light. It's positioning you as being this knowledgeable person, but probably in a way that feels a bit more comfortable because you're focused on something else. If you kind of reframe it as you giving something back because you're being helpful, then maybe that's a way of unblocking this barrier around posting in the first place.
Yeah. A wise man told me, you're so good. I can't even quote it properly. Oh, a wise man told me, don't look to be in the spotlight, be the spotlight.
Yeah, I like that.
Well, you know who said it, don't you?
I suspect so.
Daniel Priestley said that.
Course,
It is one
course,
that I quote quite a lot. When people are having those little wobbles, it's like, no, just point towards what your customers are trying to sort out. What struggles have they got? Issues, needs, concerns, challenges, jobs to be done. Brilliant framework that. Talk about that. You're turning up as being someone who's useful, but they might want to talk to because they're trying to get their heads around it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny, actually. You talk about how it works, that example you've got. There's an example that's just happened to me, and this isn't me doing something, it's what somebody's done that's had an effect on me. Yeah. So what she's done is she said, right, I'm going to put out 10 videos around these 10 key areas that people in this industry need to know. Yeah. And then she's done it, and she's done them as lives, LinkedIn lives. Yeah. Each one has got the title, which has been carefully crafted. But I'm not even watching the LinkedIn lives. I've just looked at what the title is, the fact that she's putting herself saying, I can sit and talk about this for 10 minutes. I'm like, right, I need to talk to you. I don't care what you said in those. I'm not going to sit and watch them. I've got a specific question, which I think you can answer. Bang. So even the actual content is stuff, because she's shown she can. Not, oh, here are some products that we've got, and this is what the company does, and me, we. It's talking about customer issues.
Perfect.
And the very fact you can, I thought, wow. Okay.
It works.
You're on my list. Yeah, it does. I want to get back to what you said there, because I just need to underline something. You went through them fairly fast. I'm like, hang on a minute. These are worth talking about. First thing you said is, it makes sales easy. Yeah.
It does.
Because people are making their first impressions of you before they meet you, kind of, which is a bit weird, isn't it?
Let me give you an example, which is a bit of a cringy example. And if we go back to feelings of imposter syndrome, this would probably be a great example of that as well. So it was during the pandemic, and I had set up, and this is in my previous business, and I set up a Zoom, of course, because pandemic time, we lived on Zoom. And it was a Zoom with a utilities company who were looking at doing some work with us. And I knew one of the people on the call, and two of the people I didn't know. So I just had their names. So I show up for the call, and it was really a bit awkward at the beginning of the call for me, in that they were really giggly and saying, oh, we feel like we know you already. You're a bit LinkedIn famous, aren't you? We see. And I was just like, oh no. And I felt like total imposter syndrome. And then I thought in my head, I'm like, God, get over it. This is actually really helpful. So I was having a bit of a laugh about that with them, and they were talking about maybe an award that they'd seen us win or something. So I was able to then talk about that as well. So then by the time we actually got into the sales conversation, I knew that they were going to buy what I was selling. So before I showed up for that call, I didn't know that. I just knew I was having a call with these people who were a bit interested in this particular service that we had. And it just made it so easy, because their impression was, we know her from LinkedIn. And that was it. And it changed the dynamic of the conversation, because it meant that I knew, I was reading the virtual room to know that they'd already made the decision that they were going to work with us. So it made it easy So much as it was a bit like cringe, it was a good cringe because it put me in a really good place to close that deal on the call.
Brilliant. I mean, and that's what you said. So sales made easy, because you become a magnet. You'd attracted them to you. Say, can we talk to you? Because they've seen your stuff, they've looked at it, they've considered it, they've started to know you. People are engaging far later down the buying process anyway. So they're doing some of that stuff, but they're doing it with you, with the stuff you're sharing. So they're like, okay, can you just come and help us with this last little bit? But you've actually been helping all the way along. Yeah. And that's something that salespeople are saying a lot. It's like, oh, customers are so hard to speak to. They're coming in late. We're only in an RFP or tender style, and they've already made the decision. Yeah. Because they're doing it with somebody else, or they're doing it on their own with content from somewhere else.
Yeah.
Now we can help ourselves get in there, say, look, here's some stuff, have it, use it, work along what you're going to do anyway. Hopefully get us involved.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
And they already know you. Yeah. It is, and I've had similar moments where maybe it is that British thing. It's like, what I'm doing has worked, and I feel a bit embarrassed about the fact that somebody say, oh yeah.
You've just got to get over it. Like, it happens, I'm based in Newcastle and I spend quite a bit of time in London, and I've had people come up to me at events in London, and even in the street on the way to an event in London, saying, I know you from LinkedIn. And I'm not massive on LinkedIn. I do okay on LinkedIn, but I definitely wouldn't call myself a LinkedIn influencer, but I am quite visible on there. And I just now say, oh, thank you. That's great to hear. I really appreciate that, rather than get really awkward and embarrassed, because that's what I used to do. And then I used to think, well, that's not very cool, is it? I need to be a bit more laid back about these things. So I just see it as a real positive now, because it is, and it opens up the conversation. If someone's seen you and they're approaching you, everything just falls away from that. And whether it becomes a sale or some level of collaboration or just a new contact, it's all really positive, good stuff.
So we're adding a string to our bow, because we're doing all the stuff that we're doing anyway, and it's just something else. Yeah. We said another of the barriers might be time, but again, I don't think it has to be time consuming. Once you've worked out what you're going to do, how you're going to do it,
this is the
isn't
thing.
it what you're doing anyway?
Some of it. So if you were to ask me, what do I think makes up profile? So we talk about personal branding, which it's a term that I struggle with, because I think it's got negative connotations. I think it's all that, people stood next to the big Lamborghini and whatever, and I'm an influencer and all this crap, and I don't like that. So I talk about profile raising, but it is personal branding, but it's not just the social media bit. So if it was just the social media bit, there's some tricks around batching up content. I often write a LinkedIn post in my notes app on the train into the office, and then by the time I've got there, I kind of re-look at it and take a few bits out and post it. So that's how I use my time well. But it's so much more than just social media. So if I was to say, what makes up awards, what makes up your profile, it's all these other things that you can then talk about on social media. For me, social media is the last bit. So it's things like awards, if that's relevant. It's perhaps writing a book, which I think is something that everybody should do. It's speaking at an event. It's hosting your own event. It's networking. It's exploring ways that volunteering might be able to raise your profile. It's maybe getting onto a board. It's all these different things. Podcasting, that's a great example. So all of these things that I think actually make up that profile that you then talk about and share, which gives you great content to share as well on social media. So I think there's quite a bit to it. And all of those things that I've said do take some time to do if you're going to do them well, which is why people engage with us as an agency, because we do it for them. That said, it's still things that you can make time for. And if we're saying that it's making sales a lot easier, then actually maybe it's just carving out your time a bit differently to spend on this sort of content creation or being involved in these things, and just being very strategic about it so that it doesn't take you away from then doing the sales bit, because it should make it all easier rather than adding more jobs to the list.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, the list you're given there, brilliant. I mean, as a sales leader, as a business leader, that should be something that you're saying, we should be doing this stuff, and it gives us, the business, stuff to talk about. And as the figurehead, really, you should be the figurehead and leading that. But I think the individual salespeople, just doing the job, that gives you content. If every day you just look at what did I speak about, what did I speak to customers about today? Just every day. I mean, hopefully speaking to customers every day. Yeah. What was that conversation about? Oh, we're helping them solve this problem. We're helping them with this issue. We did not product, this problem, this issue. Okay. That was cool. Right. Write about that. Because if they've got that problem, somebody else probably has. Write about it. Get over yourself, point your phone at yourself, talk to it, say, this is the issue. This is what we did. Bang. Because I think when it's delivered by somebody, now that's becoming even more valuable.
100%.
Or is that it's just how I see it?
No, you're absolutely right. And I think it's being clever with that content. So say, for example, you're recording answering a problem or a challenge that you're seeing out there. You can then cut that content to then create a blog or the LinkedIn article, or you might want to start having a podcast and start talking about some of these things in a podcast, or you might have a strategy around guesting on podcasts if hosting your own's not something that you feel that you have the time or the energy to do. So there's ways of being really clever about things. You know, people perceive me as being pretty visible, but I wouldn't say I spend loads of time on being visible anymore, because I'm just a bit more clever about how I do things and choosing the right way to do things as well. And I think that then gets to the point where it's not something that you're doing all the time, because it would be so easy for us to do this kind of stuff all the time, because actually it's quite fun when you get into it. But you've got to be strategic around what's going to add the value, and and double down on that, really.
And that's just having a system, having a discipline, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you are around all the time, I suspect, because the scheduling to go into LinkedIn, YouTube, TikTok, whatever, has come from probably a core piece of something you did, maybe an hour's worth of webinar or something like that, which is then divided up, chopped up, written up, and it goes off into all these different things. So you are kind of ubiquitous in what you're doing, but you've only put a little piece into that. You can get on with doing what you do the rest of the time.
Yeah, I think so. And I think things like, you know, I'm onto my third book now, and books have always been really good because you can carve up the content from books so easily into different things. So, you know, with my new book, I've already been able to use that to do a couple of posts. I've used it to write. I've got a monthly column for Elite Business. So I've used some of the content from the book for my last 3 columns. So, you know, it is being clever about how you repurpose that and doing that in the right way. And also, it just makes sense to do it that way, because the stuff that you're talking about shouldn't be really random and have no links to each other. It should be joined up. It should be cohesive. So therefore, why would you not do that? Because it all links together.
That's a bit of a trap that I fell into, in that I started saying stuff, and then because I said it, I started trying to say other stuff. Look at you.
That wasn't relevant.
Look at you grimacing.
That wasn't relevant.
Carry on. Well, I might have drifted off in relevance, or I was pushing so hard to keep saying new things. It's like, well, no, come back and keep saying the stuff that it is that you're trying to get the message across, because not everyone will get it every time. And the people that do get it probably want to hear it again. So
why did you drift off? Did you drift off because you were kind of saying stuff that was getting a bit of an impact, but then you realized it wasn't totally relevant to what you were about?
I think I might have got a bit bored with what I was saying.
Okay, that's interesting.
It was a me problem.
Right.
Yeah. So I was desperately seeking new things. I like new things. You know, I'm curious. I want this. I want to share stuff with people. Whereas actually what I'd packaged and what I should be talking about all the time, which I do now, staying on the same track. Yeah, I'd just gone off, and so it did become a bit random. In my head, it connected. Probably only in my head.
But that's good that you could
keep in the same lane. That's what I do. That's what I'm about.
Yeah, and it's fine to drift off, and then, you know, you've noticed that and you've pulled yourself back in. So good.
The other, and I'm only fessing up to these things so that people can learn from it. The other thing that I did was I probably went too high, too intellectual, too sort of philosophical, and again, stuff that interests me, but I drifted away from the actual problem that people are solving, which is kind of, when you're saying it enough and you've written a book about it, it's obvious, but it's not obvious to everyone. And it's having to get over yourself and say, look, just because you've figured it out, that's because you're smart. You know, keep saying that stuff. Your customer probably hasn't. That's what they're struggling with. Use that as your content, because that's what's going to have the impact. You used the word earlier, impact. That's what we're looking for, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%.
So,
Everything's about impact.
yeah, I didn't have a good coach like you, Sophie. That was right. I
Well,
was learning on the, I was
we
learning
can
on the
change
job.
that.
I
Well,
should have got
but at
the
least
book.
you were having a go, and then you figured out where you were going off, off from the messaging, and then you've pulled yourself back in. So it's a learn.
It was a learn, and it had the benefit of getting comfortable speaking on camera, getting better at concise messages, lots of things to do the job better. So you mentioned the book. We didn't tell us the title.
So the new book,
very rude. Not
well, let me tell you about it. So I've had a podcast called Beyond the Bio it's coming up to a year old now, which is a really short, snappy weekly show. It comes out on a Monday, 20 minutes on a tiny topic that's linked to profile raising. So we've covered speaking, networking, board roles, books, awards, podcasts, everything, 20 minutes, really short. And I thought I want to do a book that's linked to the podcast. So the podcast called Beyond the Bio. The book is called From Unknown to Unforgettable, How to Build a Personal Brand That Goes Beyond the Bio. So it's like the book version of the podcast. It's, I think it's 9 chapters covering each of the topics with loads of really meaty content and loads of take action, which is a part of my podcast as well, where I have shorter episodes coming out on a Thursday, which encourages people to take action. So I've got loads of action points all the way through the book as well. And I've got some really great people that have been involved with the book. So really excited for that to come out. And I think it's going to do well.
I hope so, because that's your third book, isn't it? Yeah. I'm writing third as well. So as you get to third, you sort of look back at first, don't you think, oh no, did I?
Well, do you know what? I'm proud of my
better.
first one. I did a second edition of the first one about 2 years ago or something, and I know that's good. And then the second one was my lockdown project. So that there's a place for each of them, but I do think this one is particularly strong, and we've actually published it through the business. So it's helped us to create our publishing arm, and it's been really fun actually to launch that, and with my book as the first one. So we've had lots of fun with it. It's been really good.
Oh, no. Awesome. But it's all about taking action. So, okay then, let's try to summarize this into 3 action points that somebody listening who is thinking, okay, I'm just about convinced, I'm going to give this a go. So it gets a salesperson particularly. I really want to kind of help people at that level. What would we encourage them to do? Yeah.
3 things. Right.
3
put me on the spot here. Okay. So what I would say is you need to work out where your profile's at right now. So a great way of doing that is, we can maybe pop a link in the show notes, is to take the Moja quiz, which measures your Moja and tells you where your profile is at right now. So if you do that, it will give you a score for each element that makes up profile and some hints and tips. So it's worth having a go at that. It takes 2 minutes, do it on any device. So that will give you a baseline to say, right, I'm here at the moment. And don't be put off if you get a low score, because most people get a low score. No one's great. Even if I did it and I practice what I preach with these things, my score still wouldn't be perfect. So that gives you a baseline. Then I think from that, it's a really good idea to maybe pick out some of those topics that you want to focus on. And it's probably not a case of doing everything right now all at once, because you'll probably burn yourself out doing all the things. But it might be that you go, okay, well, I feel comfortable with networking, but I'm going to step that up. So I'm going to focus on networking. Speaking, actually, I feel really uncomfortable with that, but I can see the benefits that brings. So I'm going to add that too. And I'm going to work out, how do I get more speaking opportunities, and how do I prepare myself so that I feel more comfortable and confident in those situations? And it might be that you just focus on those 2 things short term, but you then need to create some level of action plan in the way that I've just suggested. And then I guess my third thing would be around maybe finding someone that you can work with on an accountability basis to make sure that you actually do these things and that you review the things. So that might be good. And it might be that you're just checking in with yourself each month, and you're You're measuring the difference. You might take the quiz again 3 months later and see if your score's gone up. Or it might just be that you're journaling or some kind of level of reflection where you can see that improvement. And then it might be that you then go back and you pick another couple of things that you want to work on. But I really strongly believe that if you take these actions around those things that increase your profile, what you will see is you will see an increase in sales. You will feel the difference in those sales conversations, and you will see the outcome in how many sales you then close. And also this being this magnet for opportunities, the other things that happen as a result. So I think if you do it, you're consistent and you review it, you will see it in those numbers, but you'll also feel it too. And I think that would then be enough to kind of keep pushing forward with it and keep doing more with it.
Love that. Absolutely love that. So Moja quiz, that's going to highlight some areas. I really like that idea. So something you're already good at, something you're strong at, comfortable, do that, get even better. And then the one which is going to be at a comfort zone. Absolutely. Action plan. Yeah. And the accountability. Yeah. Accountability buddies. If somebody else, I mean, if you're in a sales team, there might be a couple of you say, right, let's go for this. If the whole sales team want to do it.
Yeah, and maybe if a sales team do it, maybe take different pillars of profile, because then you can then learn from each other and see, one person's taking speaking, but another person's taking awards or something, and then you're swapping that information. That could be really fun. It's a good way of doing it.
And you just used the word I wanted to use, fun. Don't make this such a chore, such a task, so hard, like another thing you've got to grind out. Make it so you're having a bit of a giggle with it. And then even in the stuff, I mean, if you're publishing content, whatever, have a bit of fun with that too. Because that comes across, doesn't it? And that makes you more attractive as well.
Totally. I mean, I try and have fun with things like my LinkedIn posts. I'm not very serious in them. I put silly words, northern words in, and, I have a bit of a laugh with it. And I think, it goes back to that being authentic piece. Like, I think I'm quite funny. So I want to just inject a bit of humor and things. And actually, one of our values at Moja is see the fun in everything. So we talk about that and we try and have a laugh every day. And it's important. And things are so much harder when they're not fun. And I'm on a bit of an exercise kick at the moment, but I don't particularly like it. So I'm trying to choose things that I find more fun, because it's going to make me more likely to do them again and be consistent.
I love that. See the fun and everything. Life's too short.
Yeah. Totally agree.
Podcast episodes are too short as well, and so they should be. And we wanted to keep this in a nice sort of concise time frame. But there's so much more I could chat to you about.
I'll come back. We'll do part 2.
we need to. I need to have the book in front of me. I need to have some bits highlighted, and I need to go deep into those particular areas. So yeah, let's do it.
I'll send you a copy when it's out.
Let's do it. Let's do that. Awesome. In the meantime then, so where can people get in touch with you and find that quiz? So I'll put the quiz into the
quiz into
the notes.
But also LinkedIn's the platform that I hang out on most. I quite like Instagram. I'm not as big on Instagram, but I quite enjoy it. So you'll find me on Instagram, you'll find me on LinkedIn, and the link to the quiz is also in my bio on LinkedIn. So super easy to find.
Brilliant. So if we pop the LinkedIn profile in below as well, then people have got access to all that good stuff. Awesome. Sophie, thanks so much for coming along.
Pleasure.
It's been mint.
It's been mint. Well done.
No, I had to say that. Podcasts with the jokes are terrible, but if you listen to Sophie's, which is a good listen, she uses that quite often, I'd say. Ignore the words. No, joking about. It's been really cool. Lots of good stuff you've shared. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for listening to the Sales Today podcast with me, your host, Fred Copestake. I hope you've enjoyed what you heard today. If you did, please get in touch and hit subscribe. And remember, you can take the collaborative selling scorecard for free to check out how your sales approach works in today's environment. You'll find it in the show notes.